Well, the Prime Minister Scott Morrison yesterday announced a boost to Sydney's vaccination program. The city will receive an extra 150,000 doses each of Pfizer and AstraZeneca as it battles to contain this surge of COVID cases across the southwest. Joining me live now is the New South Wales Opposition Leader Chris Minns. Chris, thanks so much for your time. What more does
Thanks,
Sydney
Laura.
need at this point?
Look, we need a financial support package for businesses from the Commonwealth and the state government. During the lockdown, in the previous long lockdown, the government provided rental relief for businesses. The $10,000 payments probably were enough to get through the initial fortnight, but the extra week and the potential to go even longer means that Dominic Perrottet has to turn up with his checkbook today because businesses are hurting and they shouldn't be penalised for doing the right thing and listening to the government's health advice.
Yeah, look, Dominic Perrottet has certainly signalled that more is on the way. The government moved the dial, the federal government moved the dial a tiny bit yesterday. Now you don't have to have a certain amount of money in your account in order to have these payments. But, I mean, is it a mini JobKeeper that's required here? What mechanism? Because grants have been proven to be a little bit too slow, haven't they?
Yeah, look, I'm worried that we're going to get caught or snagged on politics between the states and the Commonwealth and what happened in previous lockdowns. At the end of the day, there's two reasons this needs to happen. We need people, particularly in Southwest and Sydney at the moment, to comply with the health orders and not feel pressure to breach them. And secondly, we don't want a longer economic malaise once the lockdowns are lifted. So any dollar saved right now during the lockdown will be magnified by losses sustained in the economy once lockdowns are lifted. That means the government's got to come to the party now. Now, I promise you, electorate offices right across New South Wales are being inundated with people saying we could probably get through a fortnight. We can't do much more than that. Rent, utilities, mortgages, payments to labour, it's just too heavy. And I'm worried businesses won't survive an extended week. They're going to need financial support from the state and Commonwealth government.
Okay, did you have any hints on what form that might take and when we might get an announcement?
My understanding is potentially today, and really beyond today would be too long. We can't go into the weekend with businesses who are already anxious about the future, worried about the next week. I think they'll be looking at rental relief and potentially utility payments for businesses that have a turnover of less than $75,000, which is crucial, particularly because they're the jobs in the suburbs, the small businesses that drive economic growth and job creation that we need in the next 12 months.
Indeed. What about this police presence in southwestern Sydney this morning? Some people feel like they're being targeted. Others have gone as far to say it's racist. What do you think?
No, I don't think it's racist. The police presence existed in Bondi and the Northern Beaches during those lockdowns. The key point here, though, is communication and community awareness. Now, I think the thing that Southwest and Sydney MPs and community leaders want to communicate to the rest of New South Wales and Australia is no one is willfully breaking these health orders. Yeah. It's a question of communication for people that live in that part of Sydney. Now, the government hasn't communicated with ethnic communities since March. You've got a situation where they're rapidly coming to the table now and saying that the disease is spreading in this part of Sydney. The second part is this is a community that can't work from home. It's got a huge manufacturing, tourism, trade, transportation and manufacturing base. That's where people work. It's not possible if you work on a conveyor line to do that from your home office like I can, and that has to be part of the government's response. So I think that they're coming to the table now and realising that this is going to require a considered policing approach, but communication is the key, and that's what all political leaders need to do at the moment.
You're so right to point out the workforce in Western Sydney and the makeup of that. Not everyone can digitise, not everyone can just go back online and keep on operating their business. This is face-to-face stuff. This is, bricks and mortar tradies that actually need to be physically there to do the work. But Chris Minns, you would have seen over the last couple of days the highest number of infections, and where we've seen the biggest growth is actually in households. It hasn't been in workplaces. There have, of course, been some construction sites, but it hasn't been in the shops per se. So how does 100 more police in Western Sydney help when those big problems are in households? Are you concerned that, rightfully people are feeling a bit anxious, thinking, are they going to be coming into our homes and checking in cupboards and under beds?
Well, look, I can understand that concern. The question here and the real challenge facing southwestern Sydney and all political leaders is what messages are we giving to the community? Why is this important? And if you look at the statistics, 40 cases are now in hospital. A big chunk of those admissions are people under 35. This is a deadly variant. And nobody, whether you live in southwest Sydney or anyone else or anywhere else, wants to transmit this disease to your loved ones and your family members. I'm actually confident, this is just anecdotal, but talking to my colleagues, that the message is getting out to those communities and those suburbs, and that everybody's, I think, fervent attempts to communicate it have in fact worked. But it'll be a tense day as we try and get through the next 4 hours and make sure this deadly disease doesn't spread in the community.
Indeed. And look, there's been a big divide, you would have seen, over the definition of what essential work is. The Louis Vuitton store in Bondi Junction has been targeted. You hear feedback from small business that they're copping some abuse and some praise from the public for staying open. What is your view on that? And I should just point out, if you work at Louis Vuitton, doesn't mean you're decked out in it. You're still on near the minimum wage.
Look, these are judgment calls that Kerry Chan has made in conjunction with Brad Hazzard. We've quizzed them during our briefings with the government in relation to it. I mean, I'm not suggesting, and I don't think it's possible for every government to get all the calls right. This is really a matter of making sure that the message goes out to the community. Now, when it comes to southwest Sydney or other parts of the western suburbs in Sydney, I think it's understandable that someone would think if Big W or Kmart was open at the end of the street, it's okay to do your shopping. Now, rather than closing down the shop, if we can communicate to those families that it's really only for essential shopping and essential needs within your household, then you can keep them open. But that doesn't deal with the business angst, and it doesn't deal with the drop in economic activity. And that's what Dominic Perrottet is going to have to come to the table with today.
If this lockdown doesn't work, Chris Minns, what next? Are we going to see Melbourne-style curfews?
Well, look, it has to work, and that's why I think the next 24 hours are so crucial. And I think it's important that there's a united front from the political leadership right across politics. And I don't think that the division within the cabinet, which we are seeing percolating on the front pages of newspapers, is helpful. We're asking people right across New South Wales to stop their business, curtail their activities, stay in their households. And if there's a divided message from within the government that in actual fact curfews and lockdowns aren't working, then why would we expect the community to comply with it? I think we need united leadership in this time. The message needs to come out right across the political spectrum that this is important to stop this deadly disease spreading in our community.
But what is divided about this government? Because you'd want those creative tensions, for want of a better term, and those arguments in cabinet, but there's no evidence that Dom Perrottet has come out and publicly, spoken against Gladys Berejiklian's decisions. He's backed her in publicly, even though he argued behind the scenes and lost privately.
Look, I'm not disputing a vigorous dispute or conversation or argument behind closed doors, but I do think these leaks from the cabinet are damaging, because we are asking people to do unnatural things, stay in their house, not conduct their business. They're draconian measures that are in place to keep us safe. And I think the message from all the political leadership, even from within the government, is that this can work if we stick with it. We have to follow the health advice. We are asking the people of Sydney in particular to do, extraordinary things to keep us safe. And the message needs to come out that it can work, and that we back the health advice and the direction and the message from the Chief Health Officer, Kerry Chan.
Okay, Chris Minns, good to talk to you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Laura.